Vikramaditya and the Hermit. Long ago, there lived a king named Vikramaditya who ruled over Ujjain. He was the most famous and fearless of all the rulers of his time. One day, he was presiding over his court as usual when a hermit came there. He offered a fruit to the king. The king was very judicious. He ordered his treasurer to keep the fruit safe and preserve it carefully. According to him, the fruit had been presented to him in the court, so it was his people's property. The treasurer, as per the king's orders, kept the fruit in the store. The next day, the hermit came again and gave another fruit to the king. The king in turn again gave it to his treasurer for storing it. These visits of the hermit to the king's court became a routine. Each time he gifted a fruit to the king. The gems in the fruit. One day the hermit came as usual to the court. He asked the king, "O king, where are the fruits I gave you? What did you do with them?" The king replied, "All the fruits have been kept safely in the royal treasury." The hermit said, "They must have got rotten by now." The king asked, "Why don't you find out yourself?" He sent for the treasurer and asked him to show the fruits. The treasurer led the king and the hermit to the place where he had kept the fruits. The king examined the fruits one by one and found that all of them were rotting. Then he cut one fruit. To his surprise, a gem fell out of it. Curious, he cut all the fruits and each had a gem. He asked the hermit, "How did this happen?" The hermit replied, "I have certain powers." The hermit's proposal. The hermit continued, "I can give you more of these. Your kingdom will prosper, and so will your people. But you will have to do something for me in return." The king thought for a while and asked, "What can I do for you?" The hermit replied, "In the forest of Tanakpur is a peepal tree, in which hangs a corpse upside down. You have to bring that corpse to me." The king was surprised to hear this. He asked, "Whose corpse is it?" The hermit replied, "A ghost named Betal lives in the corpse. Bring him to me. I want to enhance my spiritual powers. I will also help you." The king said, "I will get you the corpse in the interest of my people." The hermit said, "You can commence your mission on the next moonless night. I will wait for you in the crematory." King Vikramaditya finds Betal. So on the next moonless night, King Vikramaditya went to the forest. After looking for hours, King Vikramaditya found the peepal tree. He pulled the corpse down, placed it on his shoulder and started for his kingdom to give the corpse to the hermit. As King Vikramaditya travelled some distance, he heard a voice. It was the ghost in the corpse, which spoke to him. "Who are you? Why and where are you taking me?" The king replied, "I am Vikramaditya, the ruler of this kingdom. I have come to take you to my kingdom." The ghost asked, "Why and who told you about me?" The king replied, "A hermit told me about you. He needs you. But who are you?" The ghost replied, "My name is Betal. I am prepared to go with you. But there is a condition." "Tell me," ordered King Vikramaditya. Betal said, "During the journey, I will tell you a story to pass the time." Betal's condition. Betal continued, "But I have a condition. You will not utter a word till you have arrived at your destination. If you speak on the way, I will fly back to my peepal tree." King Vikramaditya agreed to the condition immediately. Betal continued, "During my travels, I recount to have heard that you are the most sensible king ruling your kingdom. Now listen carefully to the story I am going to tell you. You will have to answer my questions also regarding the story. If you deliberately evade answering my questions, I will break your head into pieces." The king replied, "Betal, as you know, truth always prevails. I promise not to let you down. I am prepared to hear your story." Betal responded, "I expect you to keep your word." Saying so, Betal began the story. The fair king. The city of Andak was ruled by a very righteous king. He personally looked into the affairs of his people. He listened to their complaints and redressed them as well. People were free to visit his court whenever they wished. They could express themselves freely. One day an old man came to the king's court. He was accompanied by his two blind sons. The king asked, "What brings you to the court?" The old man replied, "Your Highness, due to some unfortunate circumstances, I am leading a life of misery. But in a matter of time, I will regain my lost wealth. However, I would be highly obliged if you could lend me 1,000 gold coins. I will repay this loan as soon as I can." "And if you don't?" asked the king. The old man promptly replied, "I will leave my sons with you as guarantee." The old man continued, "Sir, my sons are blind, but they are gifted. They will serve you well." The king was surprised. He asked, "How can these blind sons of yours be of any service to me?" The old man replied, "Well, my elder son is an expert judge of horses, and my younger son can test any kind of jewel." The amazed king said, "But they are blind. How do they perform their tasks?" The old man replied, "They rely on their senses of smell and touch respectively to do their jobs. If you ever find any of them giving a wrong judgment, you may have them beheaded. You may also punish me after I have returned." The impressed king took the old man's word. He gave him the 1,000 gold coins he had asked for. He took the two blind sons into his service. The horse trader. Days went by. One day, a horse trader came to the court to sell a horse to the king. The trader stated that the horse was of a good Arabian breed. He boasted that it was very beautiful and a good runner. The king did not wish to buy the horse blindly, so he asked the blind son to check the horse. The blind son started examining the horse by touching and smelling it. This made the horse trader furious. He exclaimed, "What a strange way of checking a horse! And how can a blind man examine a horse? You had better stop this. It is nothing but a waste of my time as well as that of the king's." But the blind son calmly said to the king, "Your Majesty, please do not buy this horse. It might hurt you when you ride it." But the trader was angry at hearing this. The blind son's revelation. The king, on the other hand, thought about what the blind son said. Then he commanded, "Let a horse expert ride this horse." So an expert rider sat on the horse. But no sooner did he sit than the horse threw him off its back. The trader was stunned. He exclaimed, "The horse never behaves like that with me." The blind son replied, "What you say is true. But the fact is that this horse does not harm any milkman. Why did you give up your profession?" The horse trader gasped and asked, "How did you know that I was a milkman previously?" The blind son replied, "I found this out by smelling your horse. I could make out that it was born in your house. You fed it on a buffalo's milk. Its parents were also owned by you." The trader left the court along with his horse, amazed at the blind son's revelation. The jeweler. After a few days, a jeweler came to the king's court. He brought several precious stones and gems. The king liked a diamond. He gave it to the blind son and asked him to examine it. The blind son examined the diamond. He rubbed it between his palms several times. Then he said to the king, "Sir, the diamond is priceless, but it will be inauspicious for the one who wears it." The king asked, "Why do you say so?" The blind son replied, "Your Majesty, this diamond has taken the lives of at least 2 members of the jeweler's family." Hearing this, the jeweler felt ashamed of himself. He asked the king to forgive him. Then he left the court along with his gems and precious stones. A few days later, the old man came back. He repaid the coins he had borrowed. Then he asked the king for his sons. The king's justice. The blind sons came. And as the three were leaving, the king asked the old man, I have seen your son's talents. What is yours? The old man replied, I can tell the reality of a man. The king asked, Who am I? You are the son of a thief, replied the old man. The king was angry. He ordered the beheading of the old man and his two sons. As the story ended, Betal asked King Vikramaditya, Was the king justified in ordering the execution? Speak up, or I will break your head into pieces. King Vikramaditya replied, No, the act was unjustifiable. The king really was the son of a thief, but the old man is to be blamed too. He should have realized what he was saying. Betal said, Your judgment is praiseworthy, but because you have spoken, I am going. Saying so, Betal flew away. King Vikramaditya drew his sword and went after Betal to catch him again. Princess Chandralekha. King Vikramaditya cautiously approached the peepal tree. The corpse was hanging upside down as usual. He took the corpse down. Placing it on his shoulder, he marched towards his kingdom. On the way, Betal the ghost said to him, I am going to tell you another story. Listen to it carefully and answer my question wisely. Otherwise, I will break your head into pieces. So Betal began telling the story. There was a beautiful princess named Chandralekha in the kingdom of Magda. Many princes from far and wide wished to marry her, but to their disappointment, Chandralekha did not find none of them suitable. Days went by. Chandralekha's mother became worried. She was surprised that Chandralekha did not like even one of the suitors. One day, she asked Chandralekha, Why have you rejected all the marriage proposals? Did you not like any of them? What qualities are you looking for in your future husband? The suitors. Princess Chandralekha thought for a moment and then replied, My husband should be strong and talented. He should also be courageous. Her mother said, If this is so, then look for these qualities yourself in the princes who propose to you for marriage. Chandralekha replied, Yes, mother, I will. Some days later, a prince named Virendra came and proposed to Chandralekha. She did not beat about the bush and asked, What is your expertise? Virendra replied, I tell the fortunes of people, and I have never been proven wrong. Chandralekha told him to be their guest till she made up her mind. The prince was taken to the guest chamber of the palace. The next day, another prince by the name of Udaivir arrived in the palace. He too proposed to Chandralekha. She said to him, If you wish to marry me, I would like to know what your skills are. The princess is missing. Prince Udaivir replied that he possessed a chariot which could run on land and fly in the sky as well. He too was asked to stay as a guest by Chandralekha. Next day, a prince named Dhananjay proposed to Chandralekha. Princess Chandralekha put up the same question to him as she had put up to the other two princes. He replied, I am an unparalleled warrior. No one can face me. He was also invited to stay as a guest. Everything seemed to be going well when something terrible happened. Chandralekha was found missing from the palace. She could be found nowhere. A detailed search was made, but there was no trace of her. The worried queen sent for Prince Virendra. She said to him, You must know by now that the princess is missing. You are a fortune teller. Please find out where she is. The prince went into a trance. The princess is rescued. Then he made some calculations on a piece of paper and said, A giant, in the hope of marrying the princess, has kidnapped her. The panicked queen went to her room. She summoned all the three princes in her room. Then she made a request to them, saying, Please save my daughter Chandralekha. The three princes got down to work immediately. Prince Virendra drew a map to reach the giant's palace. Prince Udaivir offered to take the two princes in his magical chariot. Prince Dhananjay drew his sword and they all flew in the chariot towards the palace of the giant. The giant was furious to see the three princes in his palace. He rushed to fight against them. Dhananjay faced him. A fierce fight took place between him and the giant. Finally, Dhananjay cut off the giant's head with his sword. The giant lay dead. All three princes were very happy. The dilemma. Chandralekha and the three princes returned to the kingdom. The queen was very happy to see Chandralekha alive and well. She thanked all the three princes. Now all was well. Everybody was happy. But something new was happening. The three princes were arguing amongst themselves as to who should get the princess. Prince Virendra said, "If I had not told the whereabouts of the princess, you would not have found her. So it is me who should marry her." Prince Udayveer argued, "It was due to my chariot that we could reach the giant's palace." Prince Dhananjay stated, "Had I not fought the giant, everyone would have been dead, and the giant would have married Chandralekha." Finally, it was decided that Princess Chandralekha should herself choose her future husband. Betal said, "Vikram, answer me now. Whom did she marry? Who was the most deserving of the three?" Vikramaditya's answer. Betal continued, "Let me remind you that all the three princes made almost the same contribution towards the release of Chandralekha from the hands of the giant. And as always, if you do not answer my question correctly, I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya was silent for a few moments and then replied, "As the saying goes, might is right, so it would be Prince Dhananjay who was most suitable to marry Chandralekha. If he had not killed the giant, it would have been impossible to free the princess." Betal said, "Rightly judged, Vikram, but you have spoken in spite of my warnings. Now I have no choice but to leave you and return to my tree." Having said so, Betal left the shoulder of King Vikramaditya and flew away. A furious King Vikramaditya drew out his sword and ran after Betal to catch him once again. Brahmin Keshav. A furious King Vikramaditya followed Betal to the peepal tree. He pulled down the corpse from there. He lifted the corpse and put it on his shoulder. Then he started walking. On the way, Betal said to him, "Vikram, listen to the story I am going to tell you." Saying so, Betal began to tell the story. Once there was a town called Dharmasthala. It was situated on the banks of river Yamuna. In this town lived a Brahmin by the name of Keshav. He was very learned. He had read almost all the religious scriptures. Now he had a small family consisting of a wife, son and daughter, Madhumalti. Madhumalti was exceptionally beautiful. So beautiful was she that even the fairies envied her. But as she grew with each passing year, her parents became worried for her. They started looking for a suitable groom for her. Keshav and Madhu. One day, Keshav was invited to perform a religious ceremony in a client's house. While he was performing the ceremony, he came across a young Brahmin named Madhu. He was a student of the Vedas and the Shastras and had topped in the Gurukul. Keshav developed an instant liking for Madhu. He told Madhu about his daughter and expressed his desire to get Madhumalti married to him. He even paid a visit to Madhu's house and met his parents. Madhu's parents were very happy to get such a nice alliance. His father said, "It will be an honor to have Madhumalti as our daughter-in-law. In fact, we ourselves were looking for such an educated and respected family." A happy Keshav went home with a packet of sweets. He said to his wife, "Our worries are over. I have found a match for our daughter. His name is Madhu. He belongs to an educated and well-to-do family." The three alliances. Keshav's wife was very surprised. She said, "You should have talked to me before consenting for the alliance. As it is, I too have found a match for Madhumalti. The groom-to-be is a handsome young man named Vaman. His parents have also consented." Keshav could not say anything after hearing this, but there was more to come. As Keshav was digesting this fact, his son entered the house. He looked very excited. He said happily, "Father and mother, I have some good news for you. It will be a relief for you to hear that I have found a match for Madhumalti. The boy's name is Madhusudan. He is a highly accomplished man." The parents stared at each other in shock. They could not understand what was happening. Suddenly, there were three alliances for their daughter, Madhu, Vaman and Madhusudan. They told their son about the matches they had found for Madhumalti. Death of Madhumalti. All the three members of the family started thinking about the issue. They could not find a solution. Ultimately, they decided to leave the decision to Madhumalti. She would select her own husband from the three suitors. On the appointed day, all the three would-be grooms arrived at Keshav's house. It was a tough choice for Madhumalti to make, as all the three were good. In the midst of all this, unobserved by anyone, a black cobra crept into the room. It slowly crawled towards Madhumalti and bit her. None could save her. She died instantly. The three suitors mourned for their loss, as did everyone else. Later, Madhumalti's last rites were performed. Madhu gathered her charred bones in an earthen pot. He went to another town and started living there. Vaman gathered Madhumalti's ashes. He built a hut on that spot and started living there. Madhusudan and the Brahmin. Madhusudan became a devotee and wandered from one village to another in search of peace. One night, while roaming from one village to another, he came across a house. He asked the owner if he could stay there for a few days. The owner said yes immediately. Madhusudan was sleeping soundly when he was woken up by some noise. The owner and his wife were quarreling over some trifle, but the matter escalated. The owner, in a fit of rage, lifted his son and flung him into the fire. His son was burnt alive. Madhusudan was greatly distressed by witnessing all this. He was also very angry. He said to the owner, "You have done a very bad deed. You killed your child in anger. It was my mistake that I stayed with you. You will never be forgiven for your heinous crime." Madhumalti comes back to life. The owner felt guilty and regretted his act. He brought a book. He recited some mantras and sprinkled water on the ashes and bones of his son. Soon, his son was restored to life. Madhusudan could not believe his eyes. He thought, if I can obtain this book, I can restore Madhumalti's life. So one night, when everyone was asleep, he stole the book. He went to the cremation ground where Madhumalti's last rites had been performed. He found Madhu and Vaman there as well. He told them about the book. Both were very happy. He said to them, "Make a heap of her ashes and bones. Then I will restore her to life." They arranged the ashes and bones of Madhumalti. Then Madhusudan recited the mantras from the book. Soon Madhumalti was alive. All the three were overjoyed to see her. But again, each was blinded by his love for her. Each wanted to marry her. They started fighting amongst themselves for her. The wise decision. At this point, Betal asked the king, "Vikram, tell me whom Madhumalti should marry. If despite knowing you don't answer my question, I will smash your head into pieces." Vikramaditya gave a thought over Betal's question and replied, "Madhumalti married Vaman." Betal asked why. Vikram explained, "Each relationship holds a meaning. Madhusudan gave a new life to Madhumalti, so he was like her father. Madhu kept her charred bones, so he was like a son to her. It was Vaman who had built a hut and preserved her ashes, so he was fit to act as her husband. Thus, Madhumalti had every right to marry Vaman." Betal said, "You are really an evil king, but I had warned you not to open your mouth, which you did. So here I go back to my abode in the peepal tree." King Vikramaditya ran after Betal, who had already flown away. Birbal the Brave. King Vikramaditya reached the peepal tree. He pulled down the corpse and put it on his shoulder. Then he started walking. On the way, Betal said to King Vikramaditya, "I really admire you. You have a lot of courage and perseverance. I will tell you a story. After listening to the story, answer my questions. If you do not, I will smash your head into pieces." Then Betal started telling the story. In a kingdom called Vardhaman, there ruled a king named Roop Sen. He had a very brave and loyal chief called Rajeshwar. One day, a man named Birbal approached him. He was seeking employment. He claimed that he had great mastery in the use of weapons. He showed his skills to Rajeshwar. In turn, Rajeshwar was very impressed by Birbal, so he took Birbal to the palace of King Roop Sen. Birbal's exorbitant demand. The king saw Rajeshwar accompanied by Birbal, who greeted the king. "Hail, your majesty, long live the king." King Roop Sen asked Rajeshwar, "Who is this man?" Rajeshwar told the king everything about Birbal. He then recommended that Birbal should be engaged without delay. The king, being a man of few words and many ideas, after hearing his chief, asked, "Birbal, what shall I give you for your daily expenditure?" Birbal replied, "I charge 100 gold coins per day." The king was shocked. He said, "It is too much. I cannot pay this much. Have you a big army with you for which you need so much? Go elsewhere for employment." The courtiers were also surprised to hear of such an irrational demand. Birbal replied, "I have no big army. I have a small family consisting of me, my wife, a son, and a daughter. I have no fifth relative." Birbal is employed. King Roop Sen gave a thought as to why Birbal was demanding so much money. He reflected that it must be for a reason, which would be revealed later if Birbal was asking for so much money. The king also felt that it would turn out to be in his own advantage if he gave Birbal so much money. So, with this idea in his mind, he agreed to employ Birbal. He called his treasurer and ordered, "Give Birbal 100 gold coins every day." Then he said to Birbal, "Join your duties from tomorrow. You will be my personal security guard. Collect your money at the end of the day, after you have finished your duty. But your end of the day would mean the break of dawn, as you will be on duty at night." Birbal agreed and left the court. The spies reveal Birbal's secret. Birbal came on duty the next day. He remained on guard all night. He kept a strict eye on the king at all times, whether he would be eating, sleeping, and so on. After finishing his duty, he would collect his money and leave. One day, the curious king ordered his spies to follow Birbal and find out what he did with the 100 gold coins every day. After a week, the spies came back to the king and reported, "Your Majesty, we followed Birbal and found some things which will shock you. He takes the 100 gold coins and out of them gives 25 gold coins to poor people. Another 25 coins he offers at the temple. Yet another 25 he gives in charity to the Brahmins. Now, out of the remaining 25 gold coins, he gives 10 to lepers and another 10 to orphans." The Wailing Woman. The spies continued. As for himself, Birbal keeps just 5 coins for the members of his family. The king was surprised at this revelation about Birbal, but he was very pleased with the information. One night, King Roop Sen heard a woman wailing in the neighboring cemetery. He ordered Birbal to find the reason. Birbal went to the cemetery to meet the woman. Unknown to him, the king followed him to observe his courage. Birbal saw the woman and asked her, "Who are you and why are you crying?" The woman replied, "I am Lady Luck. I have been displaced from my place by Saturn. Now Saturn is set to destroy King Roop Sen. This makes me much distressed and this is the reason why I am wailing and crying." Birbal was shocked to hear this. He asked Lady Luck, "Is there any way in which the king can be saved from this tragedy?" Birbal and Lady Luck. Lady Luck replied, "Yes, he can be saved if someone sacrifices his own son at the temple of Mahakali to pacify Saturn." Saying so, Lady Luck disappeared. Birbal was left gaping. He kept thinking and thinking. Then he rushed straight home. He was not aware that King Roop Sen had followed him and had listened to the entire conversation that had taken place between him and Lady Luck. He was still not aware that the king was following him now as well. Reaching home, Birbal told his wife everything. She in turn woke her children up and told them everything. The son readily agreed to be sacrificed at the altar of Mahakali. So Birbal, his wife, son and daughter went to the temple of Mahakali to make the sacrifice for the sake of their king's safety. Reaching the temple, Birbal joined his palms and prayed to the goddess for King Roop Sen's safety. The sacrifice. Then his son knelt before the goddess and Birbal beheaded him. But Birbal's daughter could not bear the loss of her brother and killed herself. Birbal's wife could not bear the loss of her children, so she also killed herself. Birbal was shattered. He thought, "What will I do living all alone?" So he also killed himself. King Roop Sen was horrified to see all this, and out of guilt he decided to kill himself. But as he was going to do this, Goddess Kali came and stopped him. She told him to seek a wish. The king asked for the restoration of the life of Birbal and his family. The goddess brought some water and sprinkled it on the dead family. Soon everyone was alive and well. The king was very happy. He and the Birbal's family walked back to the kingdom. King Roop Sen gave half of his kingdom to Birbal. The verdict. Betal finished his story and asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, whose sacrifice was the highest? If you knowingly avoid giving a correct answer to my question, I will smash your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya laughed and said, King Roop Sen's sacrifice was the highest, as it was selfless and there was no ulterior motive to it. On the other hand, Birbal and the members of his family sacrificed their lives for some purpose or out of love for one another. But King Roop Sen had no need to kill himself for his servant and his family. But still, he was ready to sacrifice himself. Betal said, "Well said, you really are a wise king. But as you have not maintained silence despite my earlier warnings, I am leaving you." Saying so, Betal flew away from the shoulder of King Vikramaditya. The king ran after him till he again reached the peepal tree. Princess Shashibala. King Vikramaditya reached the tree, pulled down the dead body and putting it on his shoulder proceeded towards his kingdom. Betal said to him, "I will tell you a story to pass the time. Take note and reply to my questions honestly." Then Betal told the story. In the kingdom of Avanti lived a beautiful princess named Shashibala. She was intelligent too. Many princes from different countries sent proposals to marry her. One day, when the king was sitting in the court, the prince of Chola kingdom came there. He told the king about his wish to marry Shashibala. The king was pleased to hear this, for the Chola kingdom was a very powerful kingdom. The king needed time to think. Meanwhile, he asked the prince, "What is your expertise?" The Chola prince replied, "Sir, I am a fine archer. I can shoot only by listening to the sound, and I never miss my target." The second proposal. The king replied, "That is exceptional. Please do stay as my guest till I make my decision. I will also have to talk to my daughter about this proposal." So the prince was taken to the guest house. The next day, the prince of Vaishali came to the king's court, asking for Shashibala's hand. The king again asked, "What is your special gift?" The prince replied, "I alone know how to make the best silk cloth. It fetches a lot of money. Some of it I keep for my personal expenses, while the rest I distribute among the poor." He showed a sample of his cloth. The king and everyone else appeared wonderstruck to see the quality and softness of the cloth. The king sent the cloth to the princess. He requested the second prince also to stay in the palace as a guest till a decision was made. The four grooms-to-be. Shortly afterwards, another prince came to the court of the king. He too asked for Shashibala's hand. He stated that he was a great scholar. He had mastery over the Vedas and the Upanishads. The king made him his guest as well. Next came the prince of Chedi kingdom. He too asked for the hand of Shashibala. He claimed that he could understand the language of animals and birds. The king requested him to stay in the palace guest house too. The king and the queen decided that they would leave the decision to Shashibala, as they themselves were not able to decide. The king went to the princess. He said, "There are 4 suitors for you. You yourself have to decide whom to choose. Put the garland around the neck of the prince you like." Then the king called all the 4 princes in the royal garden to settle the matter. A while later, Princess Shashibala came there. Betal questions Vikram. At this point, Betal asked King Vikramaditya, "Now tell me, Vikram, whom Princess Shashibala chose as her husband? Answer me, or I will break your head into pieces. Do not remain silent." King Vikramaditya was silent for some time. He held Betal tightly, but knew that he had to answer the question. So he spoke. "Listen, Betal, a man can be a Brahmin, Shudra, Vaishya or Kshatriya by virtue of his actions. A princess is expected to marry a person of a warrior castle. So Shashibala would have definitely married the Chola prince, as he was a Kshatriya or warrior." Betal replied happily. "Rightly answered. Only a Kshatriya can be the right choice for the princess. But you have again spoken in spite of my warnings, so I am going to leave you." Saying so, Betal flew away with King Vikramaditya following him. The strange sight. King Vikramaditya was carrying the corpse back when Betal spoke. He said to King Vikramaditya, "I will tell you a story again to pass the time." So Betal told a story. There was a kingdom called Punyapur, which was ruled by King Veerbhadra. He had a loyal minister whose name was Satyamani. One day, Satyamani came to the king and requested, "Sir, I want to go on a pilgrimage. I have come to ask for your consent and blessings." King Veerbhadra willingly gave permission to Satyamani to go on the journey. So a happy Satyamani went on the pilgrimage. He visited the temple of Lord Shiva, which was near the seashore. After coming out of the temple, Satyamani watched the sea and the tides rising from it. He enjoyed the view so much that he made up his mind to spend his night on the shore. During midnight, he saw an extraordinary spectacle. The strange tree. Satyamani saw a tree rising out of the sea. It was glowing. Its leaves were made of gold. The fruits and the flowers of the tree were made of diamonds, sapphires, and pearls. And a more strange sight was that a young lady was sitting on a branch of the tree and playing a lyre. After a while, the sparkling tree went under the water. The next day, at midnight, Satyamani again waited for the tree to rise up again. When the tree emerged, he swam up to it and asked the maiden sitting on it, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" But the maiden did not reply. Instead, she dived into the sea, and excited Satyamani cancelled his pilgrimage. He returned to the kingdom and rushed to the king's court to tell him about his unique experience. Satyamani narrated what he saw to the king. The king too became eager to have a look at the tree. The king and the demon. So leaving Satyamani to manage the affairs of the court, the king went to the seashore. As soon as he saw the tree surfacing from the water, he swam up to it. The maiden was sitting on the tree, as usual, and playing a lyre. She said to the king, "Why have you come here?" The king replied, "I am attracted by your beauty." Soon the king and the lady got married. Then she said, "O king, do not be near me on the moonless night." But on the moonless night, the king came there with his sword and watched her. Suddenly, a demon appeared near the jewel tree and embraced the maiden. But as he bent down to kiss her, the angry king challenged him. The demon saw the king. He became angry and attacked him. A fierce fighting ensued between the two, and the king finally slew the demon's head. The maiden's curse. The maiden was very happy and thanked the king. The king asked, "Why did the demon visit you on a moonless night?" The maiden replied, "Let me tell you my story. I am the daughter of Gandharva Vidyasagar. He ate food which was cooked and served by me only. Once, while playing, I forgot to serve him. He had to remain hungry. Angry at my folly, he cursed me that I would be visited by the demon on every moonless night. The demon harassed me and wanted to marry me. When my father cooled down a little, he offered me a boon, according to which a king would come here someday and rescue me from the demon and marry me. So here you are." A dejected Satyamani. A happy Veerbhadra arrived in his kingdom along with the maiden. When Satyamani heard that the king had married the maiden, he committed suicide. Betal ended his story and asked, "Tell me, Vikram, why Satyamani committed suicide? Answer in all fairness, or I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Satyamani died due to his own fault. He fell in love with the maiden. But if he wished to marry the maiden, he should not have told the king about the tree. He ought to have known that the king was unattached and would surely fall in love with the stunning maiden." Betal exclaimed, "Absolutely right. But as you have spoken, I have no option but to leave you and return to my dwelling in the peepal tree." Saying this, Betal flew away, with King Vikramaditya chasing him once again. Guru Datta. King Vikramaditya took down the corpse and, hanging it on his shoulder, began walking. Betal, as usual, could not keep quiet. He said to Vikramaditya, "I know you want to deliver me to the hermit, but in the meantime, hear a story from me. Listen very carefully." So Betal started his story. There was a kingdom called Gandhar. Its king was a law-abiding man. He had made many laws. Most of the actions of his subjects were governed by laws. One of the laws was that it was illegal for a man to get involved with a married woman. Those who broke this law were punished harshly and sent to prison or put to death. A merchant named Brahmadatta lived in the kingdom. He had a handsome son by the name of Guru Datta. He was looking for a bride. One day he went to the temple. Chandrasena's letter. In the temple, he chanced to see a very beautiful lady. He fell in love with her there and then. Many days passed by, but still his love for the lady did not diminish. One day, he asked his servant to find out all he could about the lady. A few days later, the servant reported that the lady's name was Chandrasena. She belonged to a well-to-do family. Her father was a wealthy landlord. A happy and excited Guru Datta sent his marriage proposal to her parents. But her parents politely turned down the proposal. They told him that Chandrasena was already engaged to a man named Jaikaran. Guru Datta felt dejected after hearing this. He thought of renouncing the world. But one day he received a letter from Chandrasena. She wrote that she was very impressed to know of Guru Datta's love for her. She promised him that she would, under any circumstance, meet him after her wedding. The thief. Guru Datta was very happy after reading the letter. Shortly afterwards, Chandrasena got married to Jaikaran. On the wedding night, she told her husband about Guru Datta. She told him of her promise to him. Jaikaran felt happy that his wife had told him the truth. He gave her his permission to go and see Guru Datta. So Chandrasena went to see Guru Datta immediately. It was quite dark. As she made her way, a man stopped her. The man told her that he was a thief. He asked her to give him all her ornaments. Chandrasena got frightened for a moment, but then regained her courage. She requested the thief to let her go. She told him her story and promised that she would give him all her jewels after she had returned. The thief thought for a while and asked, "How do I believe that you will keep your promise?" The good thief. Chandrasena replied, "Please believe me, this is the word of a woman who comes from a respectable family." The thief took her word and said, "You can go, but keep your word. I will be waiting for you." A thankful Chandrasena rushed off to meet Guru Datta. When Guru Datta saw her, he could not believe his eyes. He asked, "Why have you come here at this time of the night?" Chandrasena replied, "Do you not remember that I had told you I would meet you?" Guru Datta asked, "Does your husband know?" Chandrasena nodded her head in the affirmative. Guru Datta said, "I will have nothing to do with another man's wife. As it is a crime in this kingdom to have anything to do with another man's wife." A disappointed Chandrasena turned and walked back towards her home. On the way, she met the thief who was waiting for her. Poor Chandrasena. The thief saw Chandrasena's sad face. He asked her, "What is the matter? Why are you so sad?" Chandrasena told him everything that had transpired between her and Guru Datta. The thief praised her for keeping her word of meeting him. He wished her luck and let her go without taking her jewels. When Chandrasena reached home, she told her husband everything. But her husband became angry. He did not show any affection for Chandrasena. He said, "Neither a king, nor a minister, nor a wife, nor a person's hair, nor his nails look well out of their places. A woman's beauty remains in being loyal to her husband." Betal ended his tale and asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me who holds the highest merit of the three? If you do not answer my question correctly, I shall break your head into pieces." The thief's merit. Vikramaditya forgot all about not speaking and replied, "The thief's merit is the highest." Betal asked, "But why is that so?" Vikramaditya replied, "The husband stopped loving her as soon as she told him about the other man. Guru Datta let go of her due to fear of punishment from the king. But the thief had no such reason, still he let her go. The thief did not harm Chandrasena, nor did he rob her. He had no ulterior motive for what he did. He could have taken all of Chandrasena's jewels if he wished to, but he did not do so, so his merit was the greatest." Betal laughed and said, "Vikram, you are indeed a judicious king, but as usual you have spoken instead of keeping silent. Hence I am departing from you and flying to my people tree." Thus Betal flew away from Vikramaditya's shoulder with the king following him. Leelavati. King Vikramaditya pulled down the corpse, put it on his shoulder and set out for his kingdom. After some time, Betal, who as usual could not keep quiet, spoke to King Vikramaditya, "Remain quiet if you want to, but I will tell you a story to make the journey short and comfortable, and I expect that you will answer my questions even if you do not wish to. You will have to, because I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya did not utter a word. Nevertheless, Betal began telling the story. There was a Brahmin whose name was Haridatta. He lived in the city of Kashi. He had a beautiful daughter whose name was Leelavati. She was of a marriageable age, but Haridatta was not able to find a groom for her as he was poor. Once, when Leelavati was sleeping in her room, a young man crept into her room. Leelavati helps the thief. Leelavati woke up immediately. She saw the young man standing in a corner. He seemed to be nervous. Leelavati asked him, "Who are you? What are you doing in my room? Are you a thief?" The young man replied, "Yes, I am a thief." Leelavati asked, "What do you want from my house?" The thief replied, "I have not come here to steal anything. I have come here to hide myself from the king's soldiers. I tried to steal jewelry from a wealthy merchant's house, but the soldiers saw me. They have been chasing me since then. I assure you, I have no intentions of robbing you. Please help me." The thief looked out of the window and exclaimed, "The soldiers are coming here." Leelavati told the thief to hide behind an almirah. The soldiers came and asked Leelavati's father a few questions. Then they went away. Leelavati's marriage. Leelavati in the meanwhile fell in love with the thief. She confessed her love for him. Soon they got married. The thief gave Leelavati all that he had stolen. After some time, Leelavati became pregnant. The thief went to some other city to steal. Time passed by, but he did not return. When he did not return for quite a few months, Leelavati asked about him. She came to learn that he had been arrested by the soldiers while trying to commit theft in the palace. The king had ordered that he should be put to death. Leelavati was shocked to hear this. Life stopped for her. But a few weeks after, her father got her married to another man. Later, she gave birth to a male child. Now, nobody knew the real identity of the father. It was assumed that the baby belonged to the husband. The three hands. Days passed into years. The baby grew into a handsome boy. But one day, Leelavati passed away. At that time, the boy was only 8 years old. His father looked after him. The boy grew into a handsome youth. But his father also passed away. He was left all alone. He looked after his father's business and made it profitable. When the Shraddh days came, he decided to go to the banks of river Falgu to offer oblations to the departed souls of his father and mother. So he went to the river. While he was offering oblations, he saw three hands, two of men and one of women, emerging out of the water. The young man was puzzled to see the three hands. He first asked the lady's hand, "Whose hand is this?" "It is your mother's hand," replied the hand. The young man offered her the maternal oblations. The confusion. Then he questioned the second hand. "Who does this hand belong to?" "It is your father's hand," replied the hand. "Whose is the third hand?" the young man asked confusedly. "It is your father's hand," the third hand replied. Now the young man was more confused. He asked, bewildered, after hearing the two hands, each claiming to be his father, "How can I have two fathers?" Then the second hand, which belonged to the thief, told the young man about the past. The third hand said, "I brought you up for years, till you became a young man." The young man thought, "One father gave me birth and the other brought me up." He was confused. He did not know to which hand he should offer the paternal oblations. Betal ended his tale here and asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, you are a wise king. The real father." Betal continued, "Tell me which hand was entitled to receive the paternal oblations. If you do not answer my question knowingly, I will split your head into pieces." Vikramaditya replied, "The one who brings up a child has the right to become a father. Nobody becomes a father by just giving birth to a child. As in this case, the thief was only accountable for the young man's birth, whereas the husband was his real father as he had actually brought up the boy. He had taken care of the boy. Therefore, it was the third hand which was actually entitled to receive paternal oblations." Betal exclaimed, "Vikram, you have once again proved your merit, but you have not kept quiet, so I am flying away to my tree." Thus Betal flew off with King Vikramaditya following in hot pursuit. King Shursen. As King Vikramaditya was walking towards his kingdom with the corpse, Betal asked Vikramaditya, "What is it in a man that makes him higher than the others?" King Vikramaditya did not reply. Betal spoke again, "Listen to my story related to this and answer my question. If you do not, I will break your head into pieces." Saying so, Betal began to tell the story. Once upon a time, there lived a king named Shursen. He was the ruler of Magda. He was known all over the world as a very good king. Many people came to see him. One day, he went hunting in the forest. He started chasing a deer. He was so involved in chasing the deer that he went deep inside the forest. The deer got away. As the king turned to go back, he lost his way. The king tried to find his way out of the forest, but could not. The king gets lost. It started to get dark. The king also became tired. He was hungry as well as thirsty, but there was nothing to eat. Finally, he gave up hope of finding a way out of the forest. So he decided to spend the night by resting on the ground. Though there were wild animals on the prowl, yet King Shursen did not get scared. He made his bed under a tree and began to take rest. He kept his sword near him. A little distance away from him, he had tied his horse to a tree. As King Shursen was waiting for sunrise, he heard a voice. "Who are you?" the voice asked. King Shursen was happy to hear a man's voice and asked, "First tell me, who are you?" The man replied, "I am a traveler, but I think you belong to a royal family. How did you end up here?" Gunadip, the surprised king, asked, "How did you know that I belong to a royal family?" The man replied, "Your dress and your bejeweled sword are clear indications of that." The king replied, "You guessed right. I am King Shursen of Magdha kingdom. I lost my way while hunting a deer. What is your name? What do you do?" The man replied, "I am Gunadip. I am an orphan. I am looking for a job. I saw you entering the forest. It was a perfect opportunity for me to meet you and to ask you for some work. So I started following you. This forest is known to me. I will take you out of the forest easily. For now, you can relax. Have some food that I have with me." The hungry king enjoyed the simple food. Gunadip said to the king, "Now you take rest while I stand on guard." Gunadip is mesmerized. The king slept comfortably. In the morning, King Shursen fetched his horse. Gunadip sat behind the king. The king asked him to show the way out of the forest to his kingdom. It was around midday when they reached the kingdom. The people were very happy to see the king. Everyone rejoiced at the safe return of King Shursen. The palace officials were greatly relieved. The next day, King Shursen made Gunadip his minister. He gave him a palace to live in, many maids and royal servants. Gunadip was given many other facilities that came with the royal position. Gunadip thanked the king for his kindness. One day, Gunadip went for a round. He reached a lake on the outskirts of the city. There, he was mesmerized by someone. He saw a lovely girl filling water in her pitcher. The girl's shocking words. Gunadip fell in love with her immediately. The girl also liked him. She asked him, "Do you like me?" "Yes," replied Gunadip. She replied, "See me tomorrow at this very place. I shall meet you here at this time only." Saying so, the girl went away. Gunadip returned to the palace. He told the king everything. The king told Gunadip that he would also accompany him the other day. Gunadip agreed happily. He was so excited that he could not sleep the whole night. The next day, King Shursen and Gunadip reached the lake. The girl was already there and waiting for him. The girl saw the king and asked Gunadip, "Who is he?" Gunadip replied, "He is our king, King Shursen of Magdha. Bow before him." The girl bowed before the king to pay her respects and then said something very shocking. "I would like to marry him." The girl agrees. Gunadip could not digest what the girl said. However, a while later, he regained his composure. He said to the king, "Your Majesty, she wishes to marry you only. Please marry her." But the king said, "This girl will marry you only." But the girl refused to marry Gunadip. The king turned to the girl and said to her, "Yesterday you agreed to marry Gunadip, but today you wish to marry me. What made you change your decision?" The girl replied, "I've always dreamt of living in a palace. So seeing you, I felt my dream come true." The king replied, "Your dream will come true. Gunadip is my minister. He lives in a big palace. There are hundreds of servants and maids in his palace. You will have a life of luxury." So the girl immediately agreed to marry Gunadip. Betal ended his story here. The noble of the two. Betal asked King Vikramaditya, "After hearing the story, tell me who the nobler of the two was? Gunadip, who was ready to give up his love, or King Shursen, who told the girl to marry Gunadip? Speak up, or I will break your head into pieces. Don't be quiet." King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, King Shursen was nobler than Gunadip. He was a king. He was supposed to look after the welfare of his subjects. He discharged his duties judiciously. These things place him above the ordinary and also prove that he was nobler than Gunadip. Betal said, "You are absolutely right. I must appreciate your sense of justice. But since you have broken your promise of keeping silent, I am flying off your shoulder." Saying so, he flew off Vikramaditya's shoulder and took refuge in the peepal tree. Vikramaditya ran after him with his sword. Braj Mukut and Ratan Raj. Betal began to narrate another tale as Vikramaditya carried him. A powerful king named Pratap Mukut ruled over Banaras. He had a wife and a son. His son's name was Braj Mukut, who had a friend named Ratan Raj, the son of the state prime minister. One day, both the friends went hunting. The prince saw a deer and started chasing it. The deer gave him a great chase and finally disappeared into the thick trees. The prince too became tired. He got off from his horse and decided to wait for his friend to find him. When he looked around, he found that he was sitting near a temple which was situated in the middle of a garden. Suddenly, the gardener came there and said to him, "Please move from here, as the princess and her staff will be coming here to visit the temple. If she finds you here, she will scold me." The princess. The prince replied, "Okay, I will leave this place." Satisfied to hear this, the gardener went away. As Braj Mukut was leaving the garden, the princess, accompanied by her friends, came there. Braj Mukut saw the princess. She was very beautiful. Braj Mukut fell in love with the princess instantly. When the princess came out of the temple, she saw Braj Mukut, who was adjusting his horse's saddle. She too fell in love with him. She removed the lotus flower from her braids and put it near her ear. Then she nibbled it a bit and threw it onto the ground and trampled it under her feet. She then again picked the flower up and placed it on her heart. Then she walked away with her friends. Braj Mukut could not make out anything of what the princess had done. Sadly, he walked away and waited for his friend. He was not able to forget the princess. The language of signs. While Prince Braj Mukut was waiting for his friend, Ratan Raj on his part was also looking for his missing friend. After searching for a long time, he found Braj Mukut. Ratan Raj saw the prince's sad face and asked, "Why are you so sad? What happened?" The prince told him everything about the princess. Ratan Raj heard everything and laughingly asked, "What do you wish to do now?" Braj Mukut replied, "I think I have fallen in love with the princess. I wish to marry her, but I do not know whether she likes me or not." Ratan Raj again laughed and said, "She loves you, Braj Mukut. How do you know?" Ratan Raj replied, "She has told you everything about herself through different signs. When she put the lotus near her ear, it meant she belonged to Karnataka. When she trampled the lotus under her feet, it meant that her name is Padmavati." Deciphering the language. Ratan Raj continued, "When she nibbled the flower, it means she is the daughter of King Dansen. She placed the lotus upon her heart to show how intensely she loves you." Braj Mukut was happy to hear this. He said, "Let us go to her." Ratan Raj replied, "Yes, we will go to Karnataka." So both the friends went to Karnataka. Ratan Raj wanted to find someone who was a regular visitor to the palace. He found out about an old woman who was once the governess of Princess Padmavati. She could go and come to the palace as she pleased. Ratan Raj met her and said to her, "Would you please convey our message to Princess Padmavati?" The woman replied, "What if she becomes angry?" Ratan Raj said, "Nothing like that will ever happen." After much persuasion, the old woman agreed to convey the message to the princess. The old woman. Ratan Raj told the old woman, "Tell the princess that whoever she saw in the temple garden is here." The next day, the old woman conveyed the message to Padmavati. The princess heard everything. Then she smeared her hands with sandalwood paste and slapped the old woman on both her cheeks. Stunned, the old woman came back weeping. She told the two friends everything that had taken place. She said, "The princess is angry with me. Now the king will punish me." Brajmukut became very nervous to hear this, but Ratanraj laughed and said, "Nothing will happen. What all this means is that the princess has invited you to meet her on the 10th night of the increasing moon." Prince Brajmukut became very happy. The old woman was also relieved. Brajmukut went to meet Padmavati on the appointed time, but when he returned, he was very sad. The plan. Ratanraj asked him the reason of his sadness. Brajmukut told him that the princess's father had fixed her marriage with someone else. The princess herself was sad, as she loved him. "I will find a way," said Ratanraj. He thought for some time and said, "I have a plan." "What is that?" asked Brajmukut. Ratanraj said, "Take a trident, Trishul, with you when you go to meet her. When you see Padmavati, scratch her body by striking her with this Trishul. Then take away all her jewelry and come back." At first, Brajmukut refused to do, but Ratanraj coaxed him. "Do as I say, otherwise you will never get the princess." So Brajmukut gave in and agreed to act on the advice of his friend. When he met Padmavati, he took all her jewelry and bruised her with the trident. Ratanraj told Brajmukut to sell the jewelry of the princess. The princess is banished, so Brajmukut went to sell the jewelry in the same shop where the king got his jewelry made. The jeweler recognized the jewelry. He immediately informed the king. The king had Brajmukut arrested. He was presented before the king. The king asked, "Who gave you this jewelry?" Brajmukut replied, "A friend gave it to me." The king summoned the friend to the court. It was Ratanraj. The king asked Ratanraj the same question. Ratanraj said, "Your Majesty, a witch attacked me at night. I too attacked her with my trident and snatched all her jewelry. You can find the bruise marks when you see her." Somehow the king found out that Princess Padmavati had the bruise marks. He banished her from his kingdom. The sad princess left the kingdom and met Brajmukut. But when she came to know the truth from Brajmukut, she was very happy. The faulty king. Brajmukut married the princess and took her to his kingdom. Here Betal ended his story and asked King Vikramaditya, "Who is at fault in this story? Who was responsible for the miserable state of the princess? Answer me, or I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya had no option but to answer Betal's questions. He said, "The king himself was responsible for the sad plight of the princess. He should have given a benefit of doubt to the princess before giving his judgment. The others had just done their duties. Ratanraj had proved to be a good friend. He did a lot for the prince. The soldiers had performed their duty." Betal said, "You are absolutely right, Vikram, but you have spoken again, so off I go back to my people tree." Saying so, Betal flew King Vikramaditya's shoulder and the king followed him. Manimala. Betal started telling King Vikramaditya another story as he walked towards his kingdom. Long ago, there was a city known as Malaya Desh. Its king was Samarjit. He was a learned man and a courageous warrior. In his kingdom lived a very wealthy merchant. His name was Chandramani. He had an extremely beautiful and intelligent daughter named Manimala. One day, a courtier sought permission to speak to the king. The king allowed him to speak. So he said to the king, "Sir, in our kingdom lives a very wealthy merchant called Chandramani. He has a daughter by the name of Manimala. She is beauty par excellence. No one can match her beauty in this kingdom. She is of a marriageable age. I think she will be an apt bride for you. You should marry her." The king said, "If she is as you describe, then I will truly marry her." Then the courtier went away. The false report. The king called his most trusted maids. He ordered them to find out if Manimala was suitable to be his bride. So the maids left for their mission. They went to the house of Chandramani. There they met Manimala. They were blown away by her beauty. They talked with her and were highly impressed by her intellect. But the maids felt that since Manimala was so beautiful, it would be hazardous for the kingdom. They felt that the king would be distracted by her beauty. He would not perform his state affairs properly. So out of duty for their state, they decided to give a false report to the king. They came back to the king and said, "Your Majesty, we went to Chandramani's house. We met Manimala. We spoke to her as well. But we did not find anything extraordinary about her. She is not in the least suitable to be the queen." The king sees Manimala. The king heard them and changed his mind about marrying Manimala. When Chandramani came to know about the king's interest in Manimala, he himself offered Manimala's hand to the king in marriage. But the king refused straight away. A disappointed Chandramani got Manimala married to Krishnanand, who was a courtier of the king. Now one day it so happened that King Samarjit was passing Krishnanand's house. He happened to see Manimala, who was standing on the roof of her house. King Samarjit was mesmerized by her beauty and asked who she was. His minister informed him, "Your Majesty, she is Manimala, wife of Krishnanand. They got married recently. She is the same woman about whom you had made enquiries in the past through your maids." The king said, "But she is very beautiful, whereas the maids told me that she was not suitable to be my wife." Krishnanand's offer. King Samarjit called the maids who had visited Chandramani's house to meet Manimala. He said to the maids, "You had met Manimala and reported to me that she was not suitable for me. But I saw her today. She is very beautiful. Why did you lie to me?" The maids replied, "Your Majesty, it is true that Manimala is very beautiful, but we felt that her beauty could have become an obstacle. She could have dominated you and not let you run the affairs of the state smoothly. This is the reason we lied to you." At the moment, the king's courtier Krishnanand happened to come there. He paid respects to the king and said with both palms joined in reverence, "Your Majesty, as your loyal servant, I have a request to make. I heard what the maid said, but there is a way. I am ready to offer Manimala to you." The king's order. The king got angry on hearing this. He could not believe his ears. He said, "You are insulting me now. I never take another man's wife. It is also a sin to desire another man's wife." The furious king ordered death sentence for the maids. Betal finished his story and said, "Vikram, were the maids really at fault?" King Vikramaditya said, "The maids crossed their limits when they gave wrong information to the king. They were unfaithful to him, but they committed this crime at the cost of duty to the kingdom. The king in fact committed a more serious crime by punishing them." Betal was happy and said, "Well said, Vikram, but you have spoken again. I told you not to do so, so here I go." Saying so, Betal flew away from King Vikramaditya's shoulder. An angry King Vikramaditya followed him with his sword. King Jwala Sen. King Vikramaditya reached the peepal tree. He pulled the corpse down and putting it on his shoulder, walked as usual. Betal again started telling him a story. Once there was a king named Jwala Sen. He ruled the kingdom of Ujjain, but he was not a good king. The people did not like him. He was an addict and gambled the whole day. One day, King Jwala Sen was gambling as usual. In the process, he lost his kingdom to his opponent, who was the neighboring king. The neighboring king threw King Jwala Sen out of the kingdom. King Jwala Sen had nowhere to go, so he decided to take shelter in a friendly kingdom. Keeping this in mind, he started his journey. On the way, King Jwala Sen passed a crematory. He saw a hermit deep in meditation. The king was hungry, so he paid respects to the hermit and sat before him. The hermit. After a while, the hermit opened his eyes. He saw the king sitting before him and asked, "Who are you? Why have you come here?" King Jwala Sen told everything about himself to the hermit. Then he also mentioned that he was very hungry. The hermit replied, I am hermit, so I have only fruits and nuts to offer you. Would you like to eat those? The hungry king replied immediately, Yes, your holiness. So the hermit gave his skull bowl, which was filled with fruits and nuts, to the king. But the king did not wish to eat from the skull bowl. He said, I cannot eat from this skull bowl, as I am a king. The hermit just smiled. Then he chanted a mantra. Suddenly, a beautiful woman appeared there. The hermit told the woman to take the king inside his hut and serve him delicious food in gold utensils. The king gets the mantra, so the woman took the king inside the hut, but the king was surprised to see a palace there. The woman served him delicious food in gold utensils. King Jwala Sen was attracted by the woman. He enjoyed the food as well as her company. After eating to his heart's content, he lay down to rest. Soon he was fast asleep. Several hours later, when the king got up, he was sad to see that there was no palace and no woman. Everything had disappeared. The king went to the hermit and asked, Where has everything disappeared, your holiness? The hermit replied, That was all illusion. I had created it. The king requested the hermit to teach him that mantra. The hermit said, It needs concentration and dedication. The king said he would do it. So the hermit gave a mantra to the king. The disappointed king. The king was ecstatic. The hermit said, Master the mantra by heart, then recite it for 30 days standing in cold water and then again for 30 days sitting in the fire. The king promised the hermit that he would follow his instructions. He learned the mantra by heart. Then he recited it for the first 30 days standing in cold water and then again for another 30 days sitting in the fire. But before showing his powers to the hermit, he decided to test the powers of the mantra by calling the same young girl whom the hermit had sent. So the king uttered the mantra. Sadly, the mantra did not create any woman. The king was very disappointed. Having ended the story here, Betal asked King Vikramaditya, Answer me as to why the mantra did not work. Was the hermit at fault? The king at fault. Betal continued, If you knowingly do not answer my question correctly, I shall break your head into pieces. King Vikramaditya replied, No, the hermit cannot be blamed. It was the fault of the king. It is not possible to master a mantra by just reciting it without concentration. Though the king did all that the hermit had told him to, yet he lacked concentration. He was constantly thinking of the girl, of spending time with her, or the luxuries of life which he always desired to have. One needs to have concentration to succeed. This is the reason he failed. Betal said, You are absolutely right as usual, Vikram, but you have spoken. I cannot stay with you now, so I will go. Vikramaditya tried to hold Betal tightly, but could not stop him. Betal flew off King Vikramaditya's shoulder. He headed for his abode in the peepal tree. King Vikramaditya was furious. He followed him as usual once again. The two brothers. Betal began telling another story to King Vikramaditya. A Brahmin lived in the city of Magda. He was a very religious person. He performed religious ceremonies for his clients. He had two sons. They were very talented. The first son could identify if there was wealth buried under the earth or whether there was water under it by simply touching the earth. Many people took his help and paid him in return. The second could make out the contents of an iron safe by simply smelling it from outside. He was also a proficient judge of women. By simply looking at a woman, he could tell about her qualities and nature. The king of Magda, Surya Narain, was told about this, so he called them to his court. He appointed both the Brahmin brothers as ministers in his royal court. One day, two men came to the king's court. The necklace. They were quarreling non-stop. They wanted to settle a dispute. They were fighting over a necklace. One said, "This necklace is mine." The other said, "Do not lie, this necklace is mine." They continued arguing. The king got angry over this and told them to be quiet. Both said they had proof that the necklace belonged to them. The king was confused, so he called the Brahmin brothers. He said to them, "Prove yourselves by identifying the real owner of the necklace." The first brother touched the hands of both the men and then the necklace. The second brother smelled the necklace and the hands of the men. The brother said, "This necklace belongs to that hefty-looking man." The hefty-looking man was very happy to listen to the judgment of the Brahmin brothers. He said, "Your Majesty, the necklace is really mine." The warning. The man continued, "But in reality, we had come here to test the skill of the Brahmin brothers, and we are happy to say that they have passed our test. Please forgive us." The king was very happy. He rewarded the Brahmin brothers with many precious gifts. Days passed by. One day, the king got a message. It was from the neighboring king. They were not on friendly terms, but the king had sent an offer of friendship. King Surya Narain was in a dilemma whether to accept the friendship or not. So he called the Brahmin brothers. He told them, "Go to the neighboring kingdom, find out the reason behind the king's offer of friendship." So the two Brahmin brothers went to see the neighboring king. They spent some time with him. Then they came back and reported to their king, "Your Majesty, though the king has offered his hand in friendship, yet please be careful." The chair. The brothers continued, "Do not rely on him blindly. This offer of friendship may turn out to be a passing phase." The king was disturbed to hear this, but kept quiet. The next day, the king received a gift from the enemy king. The gift was a beautiful throne-like cushioned chair with precious stones. The chair was accompanied by lots of sweets and fruits. The king was very impressed by the chair. He ordered it to be placed in his bedroom. He decided to sit on it to test how comfortable it was. As he was going to sit on it, the elder brother came there. He warned the king, "Your Majesty, please do not sit on this chair. I feel there is a hair in the cushioned seat of the chair." The king was shocked to hear this. The soldiers were called to find the hair. Inside the chair cushion, there indeed was a hair. It was very hard. The elder brother. The king got the hair examined by experts. They found that the hair had been smeared with deadly poison. Here Betal ended his story. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me which of the two Brahmin brothers was the wiser? If you do not answer my question knowingly, I will break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, though both the brothers were highly gifted, yet the elder brother was wiser as he could detect the presence of the hair in the cushion." Betal said, "You are too good, but as you have spoken and broken the silence, I am going to depart from you." So Betal flew away from Vikramaditya's shoulder. Vikramaditya tried to stop him, but failed to do so. King Vikramaditya got exasperated at Betal's escape. He drew his sword and ran after him to teach him a lesson. The brothers and the maiden. King Vikramaditya, as usual, pulled the corpse down from the tree and put it on his shoulder. He started walking towards his kingdom. Betal could not keep silent and said to him, "While you are walking, let me tell you an interesting story." King Vikramaditya did not say anything. Betal smiled and started off with a story. In the city of Angaj lived two Brahmin brothers. The elder brother was called Sant, and the younger one was known as Basant. They loved each other a lot. Both were unmarried. One day they went to a garden. As they were taking a stroll in the garden, they happened to see a beautiful maiden. The maiden came near them and stood there. Sant immediately fell in love with her. Basant saw his brother and remarked, "You seem to have been blown away by her beauty." Sant smiled but did not reply. The old woman. In the meantime, the young maiden strolled around a bit and then left the garden. The brother saw her going to a house close by. An old woman was sitting outside the house. Sant went to the old woman. He wanted to find out about the maiden. Sant said to the woman, "Mother, please tell me whose house is this?" The old woman smiled at first. She understood the purpose of why Sant was asking her this question. She replied, "I think both of you wish to meet her. But do not worry, you will find her again in the garden tomorrow. Come here at the same time." The next day, Sant got ready to go to the garden. Basant saw him getting ready and asked, "Where are you going?" Sant lied to Basant by saying, "Oh, I have some urgent work to do. I will be back soon." Basant and the maiden. The maiden replied, "No, here, take a look at me. Without my makeup, I am so ugly." Saying so, she removed the makeup from her face. But Basant was a grounded man. Looks did not matter much to him. So he replied, "I am not swayed by looks. Beauty is a temporary thing. But you are good-hearted, and that is what I like very much." The maiden was very happy to hear this. She said, "I shall give you all the happiness that a wife can give to her husband." Basant was ecstatic. He went home and told his brother that he was marrying the maiden. Sant was shocked to hear this. He told his brother, "The maiden is ugly. Why are you marrying her?" Sant tried to sway his brother's decision. Sant attacks Basant's wife. Therefore, one day, Basant married the maiden. To Basant's surprise, the maiden looked beautiful. So Basant asked her, "How do you look so beautiful?" The maiden laughed and said, "I'm actually beautiful. I wanted to test you. That is why I put on false makeup. I wanted to find out who loved me for my beauty and who for the sake of virtues." Basant was happy to know this. But when Sant came to know this truth, he was wild with rage. He went to Basant's house when he was not there. The maiden was surprised to see him there. Sant angrily attacked her. But Basant reached on time and fought against Sant. In the fighting that ensued, Sant was killed. The news of a brother killing a brother spread like wildfire in the city. There was shock and surprise on everyone's face. The judgment. Soon, Basant was arrested by the king's soldiers. He was taken to the king's court. Basant told the king everything. The king heard everything. Then he gave his judgment. At this point, Betal finished the story. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, tell me what judgment the king gave. If you fail to answer my question, I shall break your head into pieces." King Vikramaditya thought for a moment and then said, "Betal, the king would have given no punishment to Basant. He must have released Basant with honor. The killing of Sant was altogether justified." A satisfied Betal said, "You are absolutely right. But again, you have broken your silence. So I am going to fly away to my abode. As usual, you will chase me. But I am helpless as I am guided by my own instincts." Saying so, Betal flew off with King Vikramaditya not far behind. The King's Parrot. Betal started telling King Vikramaditya another story as he carried him. King Gunwant of the Avanti kingdom was a very strong ruler. He had a parrot named Churaman. He was very wise and well versed in Sanskrit. The parrot had travelled to a number of kingdoms and was well informed about people and places. One day, the king asked the parrot, "Churaman, you are very knowledgeable. Please tell me where I can find a suitable match for myself." Churaman replied, "O king, in the kingdom you will find your mate. The king of Magad is Magdeshwar. He has a daughter named Chandravati. She is very learned and beautiful." The parrot described her so beautifully that the king was very impressed. He immediately sent a marriage proposal to King Magdeshwar. In the meanwhile, Chandravati also had a pet jay whose name was Madan Manjari. The marriage. She also liked the parrot because she spoke excellent Sanskrit. One day, the princess asked her, "Tell me, Madan Manjari, whom should I marry? Who is suitable for me?" Madan Manjari told her about King Gunwant. Chandravati, without even seeing Gunwant, fell in love with him. In fact, though neither had set eyes upon the other, both were mutually in love. In due course, the wedding ceremony took place with pomp and show, and soon Gunwant took leave of his in-laws and, taking Chandravati with him, left for his kingdom. Chandravati was sad to leave her mother. Therefore, she was allowed to carry her Jai along with her. She later told her husband the wonderful way in which she had first heard his name. He told her about his parrot and his advice. The king said, "Why should we keep them in separate cages? Let us keep them in one big cage and get them married." Mrignani. The newlywed Queen Chandravati liked the idea very much. So soon, both the birds were put in a single cage. One day, both the birds were talking to each other. Then, at the request of the Jai, the parrot began to tell a story. Once, there was a wealthy man. His name was Dhanardhan. He lived in Churapur. He was a kind-hearted and religious man. But sadly, he had a wife who was of loose character. They had a daughter named Mrignani. But she too had loose moral like her mother. But she was more advanced than her mother. Dhanardhan was very ashamed of his daughter. So, at the first opportunity, he got her married. He thought maybe she would mend her ways after marriage. But he was wrong, for Mrignani could not mend her ways even after her marriage. Hardly after a few weeks of her marriage, one of her father's servants visited Mrignani. The murder charge. Now, this servant had been one of her former lovers, but seeing him, Mrignani got angry. She told him to get out of her house. But the servant did not listen to her. So Mrignani made a plan. She began to talk sweetly to him and offered him a drink. The servant drank the drink happily, but after a while he died. Mrignani had mixed poison in the drink. The servant never had a chance of survival. The husband came home in the evening. Mrignani greeted him very lovingly. She somehow managed to keep away her husband from the dead body of the servant. Night fell and everyone went off to sleep. Suddenly, Mrignani began to cry and wail. She shouted, "Help! My husband has killed my father's servant." Hearing the commotion, many people gathered there. The king's soldiers were informed about the murder by her neighbors. They came and arrested Mrignani's husband on the murder charge. The thief's testimony. The next day, the husband was brought before the king for a hearing. The king heard everything. He pronounced the husband guilty and the husband was given the death sentence by the king. But something very unexpected happened before Mrignani's husband could be hanged. A thief came to the court. He said to the king, "Your Majesty, the husband is not the murderer. It is the wife herself. I had gone to their house to commit theft. But before I could do anything, I witnessed the murder. I was petrified and ran away from the house. When I came to know that you had sentenced an innocent man to death, I felt it was my duty to come and tell you the truth." So the king immediately changed his judgment in the case. He set the husband free. Mrignani was sentenced to death. He also sent the thief behind bars. Father is the culprit. Betal ended his story here. He asked King Vikramaditya, "Vikram, you have heard the entire story. Now answer my question. Who was the real culprit in the story?" King Vikramaditya replied, "Betal, if the thief had not testified, Mrignani's husband would surely have been hanged to death. But the thief helped the husband and he was cleared of all charges. On the whole, it is Mrignani's father who was to be blamed. He was the real culprit. He did not tell her husband to be about his daughter's character. He simply married her off. This fault proved devastating for the family." Betal said, "You are right, Vikram, but you have spoken again. So I must fly again and go back to my people tree." Thus Betal flew away, despite all the efforts of King Vikramaditya to stop him. A fuming Vikramaditya again followed Betal to catch him once again. The Brahmin is blessed. King Vikramaditya caught Betal. before he could hang upside down on the peepal tree. Putting the dead body on his shoulder, he walked towards the crematory. On the way, Betal remarked, Vikram, it is for the first time that you have caught me even before I could be in my abode. It seems that you will taste success soon. Now, as the road is too long, you had better listen to the story I tell you. So Betal began his story. There was a town named Bekuntpur. An old Brahmin named Nandhasan lived there. He was sad because he had no children. One day he felt very depressed. He said to himself, I really do not know what sin I have committed, as God has not blessed me with a child. But it seemed that God had heard his prayers. Nandhasan was blessed with a son. He was thrilled and thanked God. The son dies. The Brahmin named the child Vishal Datta. With passing time, Vishal Datta grew up. The Brahmin brought him up in a traditional way. He received good education. By the age of 14 years, he had mastered the Vedas and the Upanishads. All was going well when something awful happened. Vishal Datta became seriously ill. None of the physicians could cure him, and finally he died. Nandhasan was totally shaken. He was so shocked that he was on the verge of getting mad. He threw himself on his son's bier and wept bitterly. He sat there for hours. Finally, it was time to take the body for cremation. So, a sad Nandhasan, along with other people, took the boy to the crematory. Near that place, under a tree, a very old sage was sitting in meditation. He got disturbed by the wailing of the people and looked in that direction. The sage saw the dead body of the boy. He went near it. The sage was tempted to enter the lifeless body of the boy. At this point, he at first wept bitterly and then laughed aloud. Then the sage discarded his old body and entered the dead body of the young boy. The boy was alive. The people were surprised as well as happy to see a dead Vishal Datta rising to life again. None knew that it was the sage. Here Betal ended his story and said, Vikram, tell me why the sage wept at first and laughed later. King Vikramaditya replied, The sage wept because he was leaving his old body. He laughed because he was thrilled to get a young body. Betal said, You are right, Vikram, but I warned you not to speak which you forgot, so I will fly away. Saying so, Betal flew away, and Vikramaditya followed him in anger at having been duped again. The Princess and the Young Man. Betal started off with a new story as usual. In the kingdom of Kusumvati lived a princess named Prabhavati. Her father was King Sadachar. One day, as the princess was strolling in the palace garden, she saw a young man sleeping there. The princess got attracted to him. She woke him up and asked him why he was sleeping in the royal garden without permission. The young man replied, I was very tired, so I decided to take rest here. I apologize for that, Your Highness. Even the young man was attracted to her. Then the young man went away from the garden. But as he walked in a hurry, he bumped his head into a tree. He fell unconscious on the ground. A while later, two Brahman Pandits, father and son, passed from there. Their names were Kranti Deva and Shanti Deva, respectively. They saw the young man lying on the ground. They immediately stopped and came to his help. The two Pandits. They sprinkled some water on the young man and chanted some mantras, and soon the young man regained his consciousness and sat upright. Then Kranti Deva asked him, Who are you? What happened to you? The young man replied, I am Bhairo Datta. I hit my head against the tree and lost my consciousness. Kranti Deva then went away, but Shanti Deva stayed on. Bhairo told him about the princess. Shanti Deva offered to help Bhairo Datta attain his love. Bhairo Datta was very happy to hear this. Shanti Deva took out a pill from his bag. He gave it to Bhairo Datta and said, When you put it in your mouth, you will transform into a girl. And when you take it out, you will be yourself. But do not swallow the pill or use it for wrong purposes. Bhairo Datta was very happy to get the pill. He asked, How will I meet the princess? Shanti Deva told him the plan. The plan. Shantideva disguised himself as an old man. Bhairavadutta put the pill in the mouth and changed into a beautiful young girl. Then they proceeded towards the palace. Upon reaching the palace, they insisted on meeting the king. The king called them and asked, "What is the matter?" Shantideva introduced Bhairavadutta as his would-be daughter-in-law and told the king that he was going for a pilgrimage. He wanted the king to allow his would-be daughter-in-law to stay in the palace till he returned, as it was unsafe to leave her alone. Her mother-in-law had passed away. The king agreed and said that she could stay with his daughter Prabhavati. Thus Bhairavadutta started living with Prabhavati in her palace as her friend. One day, Bhairavadutta revealed his truth to her. Prabhavati was very happy. This way, when no one used to be around, Bhairavadutta used to transform himself into his original form.
Thanks for watching. Do like, share, subscribe to Sahil Book House.